My name is Leela, and if there's one thing you need to know about me, it's this. I've always been the quiet one in the family. The girl who never quite measured up to the polished image everyone else seemed to wear so effortlessly. My family. Well, complicated doesn't even begin to cover it. On the surface, we look picture-perfect Sunday dinners at my Aunt Zara's sprawling house. Cousins gathering for birthdays, everyone smiling for photos. But beneath the smiles, there are cracks, whispers, and hierarchies that run deeper than blood. I grew up with my mom, a single parent who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. My father, he disappeared before I was old enough to spell his name. While other kids bragged about family vacations, I spent summers at my mom's workplace coloring in the break room or helping her restock shelves. Meanwhile, my cousin Amira, the golden girl, had everything handed to her. Designer clothes, private schools, a car for her 16th birthday. You name it. And she never missed a chance to remind me that I didn't belong in her glossy, high society world. From the moment we were children, comparisons were constant. Look at Amira's grades, Leela. Why can't you be more like her? Amira's dress is so elegant, Leela. Maybe she can help you with your style. I smiled through it all, nodding politely, but inside, every word was like a tiny cut. I tried not to resent her after all. It wasn't Amira's fault that my mom and I struggled, but Amira seemed to enjoy pressing on those bruises. She had this way of complimenting me that felt more like an insult. Wow, that's a cute bag, Leela. Did you get it from one of those street markets? So vintage, she'd say with a smirk, while holding a handbag that cost more than our rent. Over time, I learned to blend into the background, to keep my head down at family events, laugh when expected, and quietly excuse myself when the conversation turned toward money. Careers or vacations, things I couldn't contribute to without exposing my reality. The story really began the day Amira announced her engagement. She did it at one of those Sunday dinners. I remember the chandelier's light sparkling off her diamond ring as she raised her hand dramatically. Everyone gasped and clapped while my aunt dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, murmuring about how proud she was. Of course, the wedding will be the event of the year, Amira declared, flipping her long, shiny hair over her shoulder. It's not just a wedding, it's a celebration of family, tradition, and... She paused, her eyes flicking toward me, before adding, elegance. I knew that look. That pointed glance meant one thing. A reminder that I didn't fit her definition of elegance. The room laughed politely, but I felt my stomach knot. I worked as a junior librarian at the city library. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I was surrounded by books, history, stories, worlds where people like me weren't judged by the brand of their shoes. But to my family, it wasn't impressive enough. During dinner, Aunt Zara leaned across the table and asked loudly, "So, Leela, will you be able to take time off for the wedding? I know librarians don't exactly have demanding schedules, right?" The table chuckled. My cheeks burned, but I smiled politely and nodded. This was my role in the family, the punchline. A few weeks later, an ornate envelope arrived in the mail. Heavy cardstock embossed with gold. Amira's wedding invitation. But tucked inside was a smaller card with handwritten words that stopped me cold. "Leela, please don't come dressed cheap. This is my wedding, and I expect my guests to uphold a standard." Amira, I stared at the note, my hands trembling. It wasn't enough that I had to swallow back the constant jabs. Now she was policing how I showed up. I remember thinking, does she really see me as nothing more than a threat to her image? Someone who could ruin her big day simply by existing in the wrong outfit. That night, I sat on my bed with the note in my lap, tears burning my eyes. My mom walked in, saw the paper, and immediately frowned. "She didn't," Mom muttered, reading the words. "That girl. She's forgotten where she comes from. Don't let her break you, Layla." But I couldn't shake it. The humiliation, the sting of being singled out, it carved itself deep into me. As the wedding approached, my anxiety grew. Every conversation with relatives circled back to the event. My cousins chatted about designer dresses they'd ordered, the luxury spa treatments they were booking, the expensive gifts they'd bought for Amira. Meanwhile, I dreaded the idea of showing up, standing out as the cheap cousin, the one Amira had warned about. One night, lying in bed, I whispered to myself, maybe I just shouldn't go. But then another thought pushed through the shame. Why should I let her win? Why should I let her erase me from a day that's supposed to be about family? Something inside me hardened. For the first time in years, I wasn't just going to endure their mockery. I was going to turn the tables. And that's when the idea started forming. The idea that would change everything. The days leading up to the wedding passed like a slow parade of polished cruelty. First came the group chat. Amira titled it Aesthetic Standards Wedding Weekend, and added what felt like the entire family, plus a handful of friends who treated her like a minor celebrity. I was added last. The message history stretched up for miles. And when I scrolled, my thumb skimmed dozens of photos of shoes. Lipsticks, tux, rentals, flat lay shots of invitations. And a spreadsheet someone had made to coordinate gift costs. Just a reminder, Amira typed black tie strictly. No fast fashion. Seam lines must be clean. No cheap synthetics that create glare in photos. Hair down or in a sleek chignon. No creative expressions. A few laughing reactions bubbled beneath the message. Nadia, the maid of honor, added, shoes must be leather or satin. No faux. I stared at my phone, my heartbeat hitching. Faux? I imagined them all peering into the closets of guests with magnifying glasses, tapping at fabrics, sniffing at scuffed soles. Then Amira pinged me privately. Amira, hey cousin, checking in. Did you see the dress code? Me? I did. Amira, I know it's elevated, but I'm trusting you'll respect it. I can't have the vibe thrown off because of someone's budget, chic. Me? I understand. Amira, great. Also, your table is near the back because the front tables are for immediate family and the groom's side. Hope that's okay. Immediate family. I repeated aloud, even though the quiet of my apartment swallowed the words. A cousin is immediate enough when you need photo ops for a childhood montage, I thought. But when it came to prestige seating, I was a distant afterthought. That night, I took the bus to the little consignment boutique near the library. The one with cracked mirrors and a mannequin that always looked a little stunned. The owner, Marta, greeted me with her soft floral perfume and patient smile. She knew me as the girl who came in when she had a little extra saved and a big day to show up for. Wedding, she guessed, watching me drift toward the racks. Family, I said, and both of us understood that sometimes that word meant more pressure than warmth. We found a deep emerald gown with a clean neckline and a fall of fabric that felt soft as a breath. The material wasn't silk. Not technically, but it moved like water, not glare. The zipper needed smoothing and the hem needed raising. Come back tomorrow, Marta said. I'll fix the line. You'll look like you walked out of a glossy magazine, the quiet page. The one people dog ear and return to. I smiled. A real one for the first time in days. At home, Mom was reading on the couch, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf she'd had for years. I showed her the dress the way a child holds up a report card. She touched the fabric gingerly. It's beautiful. Will it be enough? I asked, my voice small. She looked at me for a long, long moment. If they're waiting to find you not enough, she said, they'll keep looking no matter what you wear. But if you're waiting to find yourself, you already have. I sat beside her and laid my head on her shoulder until the ache behind my eyes steadied. The first event was the rehearsal dinner at a trendy rooftop with glass balustrades and a view of the city like a tray of jewels. The wind teased the chandeliers in their clear boxes, and the servers glided with platters that smelled like butter and lemon. I wore a simple black sheath dress and a pair of patent slingbacks that I'd purchased after weeks of saving. My hair was twisted into a low knot. I'd watched for tutorials to make it look effortless. When we stepped out of the elevator, a woman with a headset and a clipboard stopped me. Vendor's load in is downstairs, she said, not unkindly, but with a gentle shooing motion. Staff entrance? I'm not staff, I said. My hand fluttering to my chest before I remembered how that might look. Defensive, obvious. I'm family, Layla. Her eyes flicked to my shoes, then my bag. Ah, she said, recovering. Of course. Sorry, we've just had a lot of helpers today. I tried to smile. No problem. Inside, the room thrummed with curated music and curated laughter. Amira stood near the center in a white silk slip dress that caught the light and sent it streaming through her hair. She looked like a swan in a lake full of reflections impossible to miss. Designed to be seen. Layla. She trilled when she spotted me. You made it. I kissed the air near her cheek. Wouldn't miss it. She stepped back to give me a slow elevator glance. Cute, understated, very. Librarian noir. Thank you, I said, my face smooth. Nadia drifted over with a glass of champagne and an open smile that never reached her eyes. We were just talking about the seating chart, she said brightly. We had to move some things around. You're at table 12. Near the DJ. The DJ, I repeated. Isn't it fun? Nadia chirped. You'll be able to feel the bass in your bones. Like a medical condition, I said softly. Amira laughed, a tinkling sound she'd perfected, then leaned in. Also, the group gift from the cousins. Since you were considering your budget, we covered your portion. Don't worry about it. My stomach turned. I sent my share last week. I said, I have the receipt. Her brows lifted. Right? There was just a, processing thing. Anyway, it's handled. You'll be listed under family. Not my name, I asked. Nadia's smile stretched thinner. The calligrapher ran out of space. I see, I said, even though a part of me blurred out the edges of the room like a lens fogging over. They're erasing me. The thought pressed anchoring weight on my chest. Asterisk piece by piece. Until I'm just family in the vague. A server appeared like a small mercy. Hors d'oeuvre, he asked, offering a platter. I took one, held it, and nodded my thanks. My hands were steady, even as something slick and cold slid into my throat. Throughout the evening, I caught little snippets of conversations that wrapped around me like thorns. Bespoke Tux obviously flew them in just for the photos. She's sweet. But she's not exactly I just can't stand cheap fabrics. They smell like elevators. At one point, Amira gathered everyone for a toast. Lights dimmed, music softened, and the photographer barked, faces to me. Amira's voice floated above us. To love, to luxury, to living beautifully, and to curating our lives like art. She looked straight at me when she said curating, and I felt the heat of it like a spotlight. After, while clusters formed and reformed around her like constellations, I wandered to the railing and watched the city breathe. My phone buzzed. Mom, how is it? Me, beautiful. Mom, and you? Me, present. It was the best I could do. The wedding day dawned with a sharp, bright sky that felt like it had been polished just for Amira. I went to Marta's early. She'd steamed the emerald gown and shaped the hem so it skimmed the floor with quiet authority. Turn, she said, tugging the last stitch. Stop. Look. I turned to the mirror. The neckline traced the hollow of my throat. The color made my skin look like it had swallowed soft light. I looked like myself, but on the day when that meant something. Thank you, I whispered. She waved it off. Bring me the pictures where they cannot crop you out. I laughed, but a slice of dread pushed through. If they can, they will. At the venue, a stately hotel with a ballroom like a crystal cave, the valet glanced from me to my car with a flicker of disdain. He quickly ironed out. Inside, floral arrangements rose like white forests around the entry. The planner with the clipboard, Valentina, clocked me and gave a more careful nod this time. Family side, she said, pointing toward a sign. As I walked to girls in satin dresses, snickered at someone's shoes. One of them glanced at me and looked away. I signed the guest book and made my way to the seating chart, a massive mirror with names scrolled in gold. Guests clustered around it, squealing when they found themselves near the front. I scanned the lists until my eyes snagged on table 12. Family, no individual names. Table 12. Past the columns, next to the speakers. A small, neat rage lit at the base of my spine. They're trying to keep you out of the photos, out of the narrative, out of the definition of belonging. I stepped back and breathed through my nose until the heat receded to a steady ember. In the ballroom, a string quartet feathered music into the air. I took my seat at table 12 with a cluster of second cousins and a couple of friends of friends. who had the social energy of people who knew they were extras. Layla, right? Said a guy with a too white smile and a too loud voice. Amira's cousin. Yes, I said. Nadia told me you work at a library. He said, already turned halfway toward his girlfriend as if the punchline were in sight. I do, I said. He nodded sagely. Must be nice to shelve like once an hour and read the rest of the time. I felt the ember flare. We manage archival collections, I said. We secure donors, run community literacy programs, and teach research methods. We also help people find pieces of their lives they thought were lost. He blinked. His girlfriend smiled at me something warm. That sounds important. It is, I said simply. Before he could paste over the moment with something smug, the light softened. The ceremony began. Amira floated down the aisle like a curated dream. Gasps lifted from our rows in obedient waves. Kareem, the groom, looked handsome and stiff, as if he'd been prepped to withstand a hurricane of detail. As they exchanged vows, I felt an odd pang. Jealousy? No, not that. It was grief, maybe for the ways we teach ourselves that love must look a certain way to count, that it must be adorned and expensive or else it's not respectable. I thought of Mom in her little kitchen, saving for my braces, making me soup when I was sick, love quietly choosing me again and again, even when there were cheaper choices for the soul. When they were pronounced married, the room swelled with sound. Confetti cannons shot silver and white. The photographer leaped, shouted, arranged, curated. Immediate family first, he shouted. I waited, knowing I wasn't in that call. Aunt Zara's side clustered, coalesced, and I hovered near the edge, unsure if I should be a polite shadow or an insistent presence. Amira looked my way, then looked through me, focusing instead on Nadia's bangles. Cousins, the photographer shouted. All cousins. I stepped forward, relief loosening something inside me, and found a spot on the end of the group. I'd barely lined my shoulder with the next person when Valentina touched my elbow. Sorry, the photographer is doing first-tier cousins for this frame, she murmured, as if it were weather. I am a first-tier cousin, I said. Our mothers are sisters. Ah, she said slowly, eyes darting to Amira, whose brows had tightened almost imperceptibly. We have limited frames. We'll do all cousins later. I stepped back. The world tilted. Later is the polite word for never, I thought. They arranged themselves like petals around the bride, and the shutter clicked like a heartbeat I wasn't tuned to. At cocktail hour, I moved through clusters like smoke. I smiled when spoken to, nodded at bragging, offered pleasant nothings to those who wanted affirmation. A woman I didn't recognize ran her fingers down my dress. This is a very interesting fabric, she said, wrinkling her nose. Is it acetate? It's lined, I said mildly, stepping away. It moves well. It does move, she said, a hint of surprise, as if she'd expected it to squeak. Nadia caught my arm as I passed the bar. Oh good, there you are, she said, the way one says it to a person who is always just slightly off mark. We're doing a shot with the bridesmaids and close cousins. It's a champagne tower thing. It'll go on the highlight reel. I'll watch, I said. She blinked. It's not that exclusive. You can stand on the side and cheer. I smiled. I'm excellent at cheering. At dinner, the DJ speakers thumped so insistently near table 12 that our water glasses trembled. We leaned in to talk, came away hoarse. When the MC began announcing families entering the ballroom to applause, he got to our surnames and stumbled. He thanked close family and community, then called up a round of applause for Amira's mentor friends from the art world. Our table clapped dutifully, and my name dissolved on my tongue like sugar in the rain. Halfway through the salad course, a server approached with a small black pouch. From the bride, he said. I opened it. Inside was a little card with silver lettering. Emergency wedding etiquette kit, it read. Inside, a pair of dress tape strips, a lint roller, an insult nested in insult, a small vial labeled fabric freshener. The scent was called Affluence. A few people at our table laughed nervously. That's cute, one of them said, watching my face like it was a weather map. A theme thing. Of course, I said, slipping the pouch shut as carefully as if it were fragile. Keep it steady, Layla. You will not give them a performance. During speeches, Aunt Zara wept into a monogrammed handkerchief and told a story about Amira's first ballet recital, how even then she had taste. The groom's mother spoke about tradition. Nadia spoke about loyalty. Everyone's words gathered and formed a crown that fit the ceremony's head perfectly. Finally, Amira stood. The ballroom hushed. I know I set a high bar for tonight, she said, smiling, but you all rose to it. We are surrounded by beauty, people who understand that life is made brighter when we choose quality, grace, and race, and elegance. Her eyes swept us like searchlights, pausing just for a blinking second in my direction. In a world of shortcuts, she continued, thank you for not taking any tonight. Laughter rippled. My chest felt tight, as if I were wearing a dress made of hands. The first dance swirled like a commercial. Then the dance floor opened and clusters formed, reshaped, spun. I caught a glimpse of Mom across the room. She was seated with distant relatives who loved a good story and didn't need brand names to enjoy a meal. She gave me a small nod. I gave one back. That's when it happened, the moment that slid the night from petty cruelty to something bigger. Something that pried at the seams of my restraint. They were lining up for the bouquet toss, her bridesmaids in a glittering arc, a few aunts and cousins drawn into the pull. I had drifted near the edge with a glass of water, minding my own breath. Leela. Amira called out, voice sugary. Don't be shy. Come join. I'm fine here, I said. She pouted theatrically. Come on, it'll be fun. Even librarians need love. A laugh broke from the group. I felt it, a snap of electricity. I walked forward, placed my empty glass on a nearby table. The DJ pumped a beat that made the chandeliers jitter. Amira turned away, lifted the bouquet, posed. Cameras raised, eyes sharpened. She tossed. In that moment, time slowed into a long, excruciating ribbon. The bouquet arced a comet of white petals. It was heading toward me, not by accident, I realized, but by calculation. She had thrown it slightly back and right where I stood. A dozen hands reached. Mine stayed at my sides. The bouquet bumped my shoulder and tumbled to the floor at my feet. I didn't move. The room stilled. Pick it up, Layla, Nadia trilled. Or is that too low? Something in my face must have betrayed me. The photographer raised his camera like a hunter. I bent, slowly picked up the bouquet. For a breath, I considered holding it high, laughing. Playing the part they'd scripted, the embarrassing cousin who gets a little glory. But the blooms shook in my hands, and I could feel 1,000 tiny eyes waiting to write the moment for me. I lifted it to my chest. Congratulations, I said, and handed it to a young cousin next to me who had been reaching so earnestly she'd nearly toppled. Her face lit with joy that wasn't practiced. Thank you. She squealed. Layla, Amira said, lips stiffening. It's tradition. So is kindness, I said softly. A hush. Then a scoff from somewhere. She's always been difficult. As the music swelled back, Valentina appeared at my elbow like a warning. Let's step aside, she murmured. The bride would like the energy to stay high. I laughed once, quietly, at the phrasing. Energy, of course, I said, and let myself be steered toward the room's edge. By the dessert table, a cluster of relatives had formed an impromptu tribunal. Sensitive one, Aunt murmured, shaking her head. Ungrateful, another offered. A cousin in a velvet dress ran a critical eye down my gown. It's surprisingly okay, she said. Honestly, I expected worse after that note. I met her gaze. Which note? Her smile curled. The one about not dressing cheap. Amira showed us. She said she had to be proactive with certain family members. Heat shot up my throat. So she preemptively humiliated me, I said. It's a brand day, the cousin said, as if reciting a line. She's protecting the brand. I left them to their crumbs and found the powder room, a quiet gold space with mirrors like a fun house for vanity. I locked myself in a stall and sat, letting the cool door press against my knees. My phone buzzed again. Mom, you okay? Me, they're thorough. Mom, come find me. I stared at my reflection when I finally stood. My eyes were bright with contained weather. I smoothed the dress, ran a finger under my lower lash line, and made a decision. If they wanted me small, they would have to work for it. Back in the ballroom, the money dance had begun, a grotesque tradition in this context. The way it was executed, guests pinning crisp bills to Amira's dress while the DJ narrated family net worths like a sports announcer. From the CEO cousin, he crowed. From the venture friend. When Mom approached with a simple card and a folded check, the DJ faltered, recovered with, from beloved family. The photographer didn't take the shot. Mom came to me and her hand found mine like a lighthouse. Walk with me, she said. We migrated to the corridor where the noise softened. She squeezed my fingers. You don't owe them your absence to make their story neat. I know, I said, and the steadiness of my voice surprised me. I'm not going to disappear. Her eyes searched mine. Then stand how you want to be remembered. We returned in time for the family slideshow. Childhood photos flickered Amira at recitals, Amira at graduations, Amira at international landmarks. Her hair bending light. Occasionally, on the edges of a frame, I saw my own younger self blurred, laughing, cropped at the shoulder, the knee, the periphery. Then, a shot appeared of our family at a community fair years ago. I remembered that day vividly. The sun hot on our scalps, lemonade sugared on our tongues. In the photo, I was centered, holding a ribbon I'd won in a citywide essay contest. Mom's arm around me. Amira stood to the side, not smiling. The slide held for a breath, then skipped. It had been cut. The next slide was Amira in front of the Eiffel Tower. I felt a cold, bright clarity. They have always edited me out when they could. Not tonight. The rest of the evening unspooled with tiny abrasions. A bridesmaid accidentally spilled a splash of champagne near my hem. A server politely asked me twice if I was with the event team because you looked so capable. The MC declared, "We're so grateful everyone could keep the aesthetic tight," and 3 heads turned toward me like weather vanes. By the time cake was served, columns of white sugar and ambition, my resolve had hardened into something lean and precise. I stepped outside onto the terrace. The city air was cooler, threaded with sirens and taxis and the real lives happening beyond this curated fantasy. A man stood at the railing, smoking with the guilty stance of someone who had promised not to. When he turned, I recognized him. Nabil, Amira's brother, with the soft eyes he hid behind sarcasm. "You look like the only real person here," he said, exhaling. "Don't let them hear you say that," I said. He stubbed out the cigarette, contrite. "I told her not to send that note," he said abruptly. "I told her you'd come anyway and you'd look better than all of them because you have. I don't know, gravity?" I laughed. "Gravity isn't on the dress code." He leaned on the rail. "Listen, I can't fix this. She's on a moving walkway and she thinks stillness is failure. She thinks I'm failure," I said, and we both let the honesty stand between us, quiet as a confession. He started to say something else, then stopped, his eyes sliding past my shoulder. I heard the click of heels and the whisper of silk. "Leela," Amira said, appearing in the doorframe like a magazine cover brought to life. "Why are you out here?" "Breathing," I said. She gave a brittle smile. "The photo booth is open. Come take a few. It might be fun." "Will you keep them?" I asked. "Or will they be archived under family?" Nabil winced. Amira's smile iced. "If you're going to be difficult tonight, perhaps it's better if you try not to draw attention." "Funny," I said softly, "considering how hard you've worked to do exactly that." Her eyes flashed, then flattened. "This is my night, Layla." "I know," I said. "And you've curated it beautifully." She stared at me, not sure if she'd been complimented or condemned. Then she turned on her delicate heel and disappeared back inside, her train sighing against the floor. Nabil let out a breath. "She forgets who kept you company at those family dinners when you were coloring in the corner." "She remembers," I said. "She just doesn't think remembering is profitable." He looked at me sideways. "Do you have a plan?" "Not for tonight," I said. And it was the truth. Tonight was not the time for a scorched earth. Tonight was for witness, for letting the details pile up until their weight revealed itself to anyone who bothered to look, including me. Back in the ballroom, the final act began, the roast. Nadia took the mic, giddy with permission. Amira and Kareem, she said, are the epitome of taste. They've curated their lives down to the grain of their salt and the crease of their napkins. I mean, look at this room. Even our dear cousin Layla managed to pull it together. A roar of laughter. A few soft protests. That kind of joke people swallow so they can sleep at night. Something in me steadied into steel. I set down my glass with deliberate calm and lifted my chin. I caught Mom's eyes across the room. Her mouth tightened, then relaxed. She gave me the smallest nod. Stand how you want to be remembered. I didn't storm. I didn't cry. I didn't perform for their story. I simply walked slow and sure to the center of the room between songs when the dance floor cleared for a beat. As if I were stepping onto a stage I hadn't asked for but had earned. "Excuse me," I said, not loud, but clear. A few heads turned. The DJ, startled, dipped the music. Amira's face shifted, surprise, then irritation, then something like curiosity sharpened with fear. I smiled gently, almost sweetly, and raised my glass just enough to catch the light. To family, I said, the kind that remembers your name. Silence rippled, then a small storm of murmurs. It wasn't the revenge they were braced for. It was a mirror. I set the glass down, stepped off the floor, and let the night continue without me at its mercy. Because I was no longer asking to be included. I was preparing to be undeniable. And while they danced on the curated surface, I could feel the floorboards of the story shifting. I could feel the thing they hadn't planned for. The twist taking shape, quiet and inexorable, like a tide turning beneath the glitter. The wedding weekend stretched into the afterglow phase, that part where the photos hit social media. The hashtags bloom and the bride posts captions, like, still floating. By Monday morning, my feed was drowning in Amira's curated perfection. Reels of her twirling in her gown, shots of her diamonds sparkling under chandeliers, boomerangs of champagne towers, stills of everyone dressed like they were auditioning for a magazine spread. I scrolled, numb, until I reached the family photos. Frame after frame of smiles. Cousins bunched together like flower petals. Aunts and uncles radiant with pride. And me, not a single frame. Not even in the background. It was as if I had been airbrushed from existence. My throat tightened. She did it again. She erased me. But then something strange caught my eye. In one video, a wide pan across the ballroom during the bouquet toss. There I was. For a split second, bouquet bouncing at my feet. Me standing still, my face calm, unbothered. And then passing it gently to my younger cousin. The comments under the video exploded. Wow. Respect to that girl in green. She let the kid have it. Low-key, iconic. Who is she? For once, they weren't talking about Amira. They were talking about me. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table with Mom, eating reheated soup, my phone buzzed with a message request on Instagram. The sender's name, Karim's sister, Hiba. We had barely exchanged more than a polite hello at the wedding. She was reserved, elegant, the kind of woman who observes more than she speaks. Her message was short. Hiba, I saw what happened this weekend. Can we meet? I blinked, confused. Meet. Why? But something in her tone restrained. Serious made me agree. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When I arrived, she was already there. Her long black coat folded neatly over her chair, her fingers wrapped around a cup of mint tea. Leela, she greeted me, her voice low but steady. Thank you for coming. I sat uncertain. Of course. She studied me for a moment, her eyes sharp, but not unkind. You already know Amira has. A way of treating people. I gave a small, humorless laugh. That's one way to put it. Hiba leaned closer. But what you don't know is that she's been treating my brother the same way, privately, since before the wedding. Her words sliced through the air like glass. What do you mean? I asked. She belittles him, controls him. Makes him feel small. Kareem is too proud to admit it, but I see it. I've heard her. She talks about him like he's an accessory. I froze, the memory of Amira's speech echoing in my head. Thank you for not taking shortcuts tonight. The same tone she used on me. She's already demanding he sign papers, Heba continued. Prenuptials that strip him of rights. Joint accounts she controls. My brother is walking into a cage and he thinks it's gilded. I swallowed hard. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one who isn't afraid to stand up to her, Heba said simply. I saw what you did with the bouquet. You didn't play her game. That's strength. Her gaze bore into me. And because I think Amira has secrets she doesn't want anyone to know. If we find them, we can save Kareem and maybe expose the truth about who she really is. My mind raced. Secrets. Amira was obsessive about control, about appearances. If she was hiding something, it had to be big. What kind of secrets? I whispered. Heba's lips pressed into a thin line. Financial, social, maybe even personal. I don't know yet. But I do know this. She isn't who she pretends to be. And if the family finds out, the crown she's worked so hard to build will crumble. In the days that followed, little hints began to surface. Things I hadn't noticed before because I was too focused on surviving her barbs. One evening, while scrolling through photos tagged at the wedding, I stumbled on a detail. Amira's gown wasn't custom designed as she had bragged. It was a rental. The boutique had even tagged it. #rented luxury. The comments were brutal. People had assumed it was couture. Now, whispers spread. She lied. Another day. Heba sent me a screenshot of a receipt she'd found in Kareem's car. An overdue bill for a credit card in Amira's name. The amount was staggering. Tens of thousands. And then came the biggest revelation. A mutual acquaintance from university confided in me that Amira hadn't graduated top of her class as she always claimed. She hadn't even finished her degree. She had dropped out quietly after failing a core course, but had spun the story into a tale of studying abroad for opportunities. Piece by piece, the facade began to crack. I should have felt triumphant. But instead, I felt unsettled. Because if this came out, if the family saw her for what she really was, the humiliation would be nuclear. And a small part of me, the part that still remembered playing tag with her as kids, before the hierarchy hardened, wondered if I was ready to be the one who struck the match. One evening, as Mom and I sat folding laundry, she noticed my silence. "You're somewhere else," she said softly. I hesitated. What if you had the chance to finally stand up? To show everyone the truth about someone who's been cruel to you? Her hand stilled on a towel. Lila, revenge tastes sweet at first, but it can rot in your mouth if you're not careful. I don't want revenge, I said quickly, though even I wasn't sure if that was true. I want them to see me. To see what's real. To stop pretending she's perfect while I'm invisible. Mom looked at me with that mixture of pride and worry only mothers have. Then whatever you do, make sure it's about you standing tall, not just about cutting her down. Her words sank deep. And that's when the idea came. Not just to reveal Amira's lies, but to do it in a way that forced the family to look at me. Really look at me for the first time. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A week later, Aunt Zara announced a grand post-wedding brunch at her estate. A chance to celebrate our new union as families, she declared. And, of course, for Amira to showcase her married life glow. My chest tightened. Another performance. Another stage. But this time, I wouldn't be the extra in the background. Because thanks to Heba, I now had pieces of the puzzle. Amira's debt, her rental gown, her unfinished degree. All I needed was the right moment to pull the curtain back. And deep down, I knew. That brunch would be the stage. Not for her. For me, the morning of the brunch felt charged, like the air before a storm. Mom fussed at me as I dressed, smoothing the sleeves of my navy wrap dress. Nothing flashy, nothing screaming for attention, but tailored, elegant, and unmistakably confident. Marta had pressed it herself, leaving a handwritten note tucked into the garment bag. Stand where they cannot move you. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, I didn't see the invisible cousin anymore. I saw someone ready to speak and to be heard. Aunt Sarah's estate looked like something out of a glossy magazine. Marble driveways, fountains gurgling, a fleet of imported cars parked out front. Inside, the brunch table groaned under towers of pastries and gold-plated cutlery. Waiters glided between guests, refilling glasses with champagne. Amira was already there, resplendent in a white suit with crystal buttons that winked under the chandeliers. She floated from guest to guest, every movement designed to draw eyes. Kareem trailed behind her like a muted shadow, smiling politely, but never speaking unless prompted. When she spotted me, her lips curved into a smile, sharp as a blade. "Layla, you came." "Of course," I said, my tone steady. Her eyes flicked over me, hunting for flaws. Simple, but surprisingly adequate. "I'll take it." I smiled. "How generous of you." She blinked, thrown for just a second, before twirling away toward another cluster of admirers. Brunch was more performance than meal. Every toast turned into a monologue about Amira's beauty, Amira's taste, Amira's commitment to elegance. My stomach churned with each saccharine word. Finally, Aunt Zara clinked her glass. "A few words from our radiant bride," she cooed. Amira rose, glowing with self-satisfaction. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate not just a wedding, but a union of values. Luxury, refinement, excellence." Her words dripped with sugar, but I caught the steel underneath. This wasn't gratitude. This was control. As she spoke, I noticed something. Karim's sister Hiba was watching me from across the table, her eyes sharp, urging me silently. Now, my pulse quickened. I rose to my feet. "If I may," I said, my voice clear. The room fell silent, heads swiveling toward me. Amira froze, mid-sentence. A smile plastered on her face, but her eyes wide with alarm. "I'd like to propose a toast," I continued, lifting my glass, "to family and to honesty." A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Amira laughed lightly, her voice high. "Oh, cousin, how quaint. But let's not derail the—" I cut her off. "I've watched my cousin shine in the spotlight for years. But I think it's time we also acknowledge the truths behind the curtain." Gasps. A chair scraped. Mom's hand tightened around her napkin, but she didn't stop me. "Amira told us her gown was custom designed," I said, projecting my voice so the whole room could hear. "But the boutique that supplied it proudly posted the rental online. #rented luxury." Murmurs broke out instantly. Phones buzzed as guests scrambled to verify. Within seconds, whispers turned to exclamations. "It's true." Amira's face flushed crimson. "That's ridiculous." "It was custom fitted." "Custom fitted isn't the same as custom made," I said smoothly. I let the silence thrum before striking again. "And then there are the debts. Tens of thousands on overdue credit cards." Not exactly the picture of refinement. More gasps. Aunt Sarah clutched her pearls. Someone whispered, "No wonder she pushed the group gifts so hard." Amira slammed her hand on the table. "How dare you? My finances are none of your concern." "They became everyone's concern," I replied. "The moment you demanded others uphold a standard you couldn't even afford yourself." The words landed like stones. I took a breath, steadying myself. "And finally, Amira's education. She's told us for years she graduated at the top of her class. But the truth? She didn't even finish her degree." The room erupted. Relatives craned their necks, whispering furiously. A few younger cousins pulled out their phones, already searching university records. Amira's mask cracked. "Lies," she shrieked. "All lies." But the room no longer believed her. They were already connecting the dots, the inconsistencies, the arrogance, the overcompensation. Kareem rose slowly, his face pale. "Is it true?" he asked quietly, his eyes locked on Amira. She faltered. "Darling, of course not. Is it true?" He repeated, louder this time. The silence that followed was damning. Finally, Amira's composure shattered. "So what if it is? So what if I had to embellish? I created an image, Kareem, for us, for this family. Do you think anyone respects the plain, the poor, the ordinary?" Her voice cracked on the last word. But it was too late. The room saw her, not the curated goddess, but the desperate woman clawing to maintain a lie. Kareem shook his head slowly. "You didn't build this marriage on love. You built it on performance." And with that, he took off his wedding band, set it on the table, and walked out. The shockwave was instant. Guests gasped. Cameras clicked. Heba followed him, her chin high, as if she'd been waiting for this very moment. Amira stood trembling, her world collapsing around her. For once, she had no script, no curated smile to fall back on. I set my glass down gently. "You told me not to come dressed cheap, cousin. But the cheapest thing in this room wasn't fabric. It was your lies." The words hung in the air like thunder. The gathering disintegrated into chaos. Guests whispered furiously, some slipping away early, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Aunt Zara wept openly, while uncles muttered about shame and betrayal. And me. For the first time in years, they didn't look at me as the invisible cousin. They looked at me with something new. Recognition, respect. Mom slid her arm around my shoulders, whispering, "You stood tall." I nodded, my chest tight but light all at once. Amira's eyes locked on mine across the room, full of venom. But behind the fury, I saw something else. Fear. The crown she had built, so carefully polished, had toppled. And I was the one who'd shown the world the cracks, the silence that followed. The brunch stayed with me for weeks, not just in my ears, but in my bones. It was the kind of silence that follows an explosion, heavy, expectant, the air still quivering with what had just been destroyed. I didn't feel triumphant. Not right away. When I got home that night, I peeled off my dress and sat in my small bedroom in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. My hands trembled as if they hadn't caught up with what I'd done. For so long, I had been the one who kept quiet, who endured, who swallowed the comments and survived by blending into the wallpaper. And now, I had stood in front of everyone in front of her and spoken the truth. It felt both terrifying and liberating. The days that followed were a storm of phone calls, group chat arguments, and whispers that spread faster than spilled wine on silk. Some relatives messaged me with quiet gratitude. It was about time someone said it. "We've all seen her attitude, but we didn't dare." Others were furious. "You humiliated your cousin on her big day. Family matters stay in the family, Leela. You didn't have to make it public." But the tide had turned. Once the truth cracked open, people couldn't unsee it. Amira's lies weren't my invention. They were her own house of cards, and all I did was pull the corner piece. As for Amira, she disappeared from social media for weeks. The once daily stream of curated perfection went silent. When she returned, the comments under her posts weren't the same. No more fawning. No more hashtags of admiration. Only suspicion, pity, and sometimes mockery. Her perfect world had tilted. I heard through the grapevine that Kareem had filed for an annulment within 2 weeks. It turned out he hadn't signed the papers Amira pushed under his nose. After all, he'd hesitated. And that hesitation saved him. Heba reached out again, thanking me quietly. "You didn't just save him," she said. "You gave him permission to walk away." Her words stayed with me. It hadn't been just about me or about Amira's cruelty. Sometimes standing up means more than reclaiming your own dignity. Sometimes it means freeing others who didn't know how to fight for themselves. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the buildings and painted the sky a bruised pink, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Amira stood there. No makeup, no designer clothes, just jeans and a hoodie, her hair pulled back messily. She looked smaller. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice brittle. I let her. We sat at the table where Mom and I usually ate our dinners. She ran her fingers along the wood grain, avoiding my eyes. "You ruined me," she whispered. I inhaled slowly. "No, Amira, you ruined yourself. I just stopped covering for you." Her lip trembled, but her gaze hardened. "Do you know what it's like to spend your whole life proving you're better? To feel like if you stop shining for even a second, everyone will see how empty you are. For a flicker of a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who used to play dress up in our grandmother's scarves. It's the one who laughed with me before comparison poisoned everything. I softened. You don't have to prove anything. Not to me, not to anyone. She shook her head, tears welling. Easy for you to say. You've always been invisible. You don't know what it's like to live with the pressure of being seen. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. And you don't know what it's like to live with the pain of never being seen at all. We sat in silence. Two cousins raised in the same family, scarred in different ways. When she finally stood to leave, she didn't apologize. But she did whisper, "Maybe someday I'll understand." I didn't know if she would, but I knew it wasn't my burden anymore. After everything, something inside me shifted. I no longer shrank at family gatherings. When an uncle made a sly comment about my job, I looked him in the eye and said, "Libraries preserve history. What will you leave behind?" When relatives asked why I had spoken out, I didn't hide. Because the truth matters. Because I matter. And for once, they listened. It wasn't that I suddenly became the center of attention. That was never my goal. It was that I finally felt allowed to exist on my own terms, without apologizing for it. In the quiet moments, I thought about what Mom had said. Make sure it's about standing tall, not just cutting her down. She was right. If I had done it just for revenge, it would have left me hollow. But because I did it to reclaim my own place, to refuse erasure, it gave me strength. I realized that justice doesn't always come from grand gestures or dramatic takedowns. Sometimes it comes from a steady voice in a room full of noise saying simply, "I am here, and I will not be made small." As I sit here now, months later, I can look back without shaking. My cousin told me not to come dressed cheap. But what she didn't understand was that worth isn't measured in silk or diamonds or curated photographs. Worth is measured in honesty, in dignity, in the courage to stand when others want you to shrink. I walked into that wedding as the cousin no one took seriously. I walked out as someone they could no longer ignore. And that more than any gown, any crown, any performance is what lasting elegance really looks like. And that's how it all unfolded. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the most powerful revenge of all. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this. Share this video with someone who loves drama, betrayal, and a good twist. And of course, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next tale of family, conflict, and justice served. Until next time, thank you for listening. And remember, the truth always finds its way out.